We're back for another season, and we're kicking things off with Paula Scher, one of the most influential graphic designers in the world. A partner at Pentagram in New York, we'd spoken before prior to the pandemic, so it was a pleasure to catch up and hear her thoughts on many of the hot topics we're all currently talking about. That's whether it's new technology, our changing culture, the rise of AI, or our value as creatives. Paula has just launched a new course with BBC Maestro. Simply titled Graphic Design, it explores the techniques central to successful visual communication. It draws from her own amazing career and gives us exclusive insight into her vision and creative practice. As Paula puts it, I will guide you through the elements that I have found, time and time again, lie at the heart of good graphic design. Thank you for doing this. I know we've tried to do this a couple of times before. We actually had a really lovely chat in 2019 and did a written interview for Creative Boom, and I really enjoyed what we discussed then. But, you know, quite a lot has happened in that time since, you know,
sure.
the world is...
The world changed.
The world changed. Indeed, it did. And, you know, the way we work changed and technology's like coming on. You know, how are you feeling? How's 2023 doing for you?
So far, so good, yeah. I have to say. I mean, it wasn't, the first half of the year was a little recession scary, but it's ending nicely. And the next 3 months look good. And then we are into 24 and we'll see how that one goes.
Oh, my goodness. I know. I cannot believe how quickly time goes by the older we get. It's just, it fascinates me. Like, what is October? I mean, come on.
It's amazing. It's amazing. It just swings around so fast.
So you're doing a wonderful course for the BBC, for BBC Maestro. You're teaching others about graphic design. I mean, wow. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to get you to reveal all your secrets in this podcast, but it would be nice to, you know, get an idea of some of the things we can expect. So we're going to talk about some of that and some, you know, like aspects of your career and how that's maybe being used as an example within the course. So we'll delve into that now. But I mean, first of all, it goes without saying, you know, change is inevitable and design has changed a lot during your career. I mean, how has it changed the most since you began working for CBS Records?
Well, obviously the technology. I mean, technology, when I worked at CBS Records, we did everything by hand. You know, I used to comp things by hand. If I had to show typography on top of a photograph, I would paint it. So, you know, it's sort of, it's absolutely extreme. But on the other side of things, what happened is that people's understanding and knowledge about what design can do has grown immensely. So you have a much more educated audience. In some ways, that makes things better, and in some ways, that makes things worse because they have more questions about things because they know more.
It's true. It's like when we go to the doctors and we've self-diagnosed.
That's right. Some of the doctors would like to throw you out.
yeah, I'm pretty sure mine does every time I see her. And like, I guess back then, the big sort of technological revolution, it was in the 80s when the computers came along. I mean, that just changed the profession overnight, really.
Yes, but it really wasn't. It really wasn't not until the late 80s, early 90s where you began to feel it. That's when desktop publishing really began as a big thing. And it actually obliterated illustrators' work because people began using found art and designers found that they didn't have to pay those fees. So it began to really hurt industries. Typesetters closed up. So you saw, and the problem was that it happened faster than what replaced it was worth, because in very many instances, typography, that's probably the worst period of type in the history of design, because you were dependent on what was available on your computer. And that stuff was bad, really bad drawn. ITC Garamond, the ugliest font known to mankind. It should be pushed in the closet. And it was on everything.
It just kind of, like any technology that comes along, jobs change, jobs go, new jobs come along. And we're seeing that now with AI. I mean, gosh, That is, do you know how that's sort of going to play with all the experience you've had? Or are you just...
Yeah, I think I do. I really do. It's some of it's not great. Some of it is great. I think for design, AI is going to take away a lot of jobs. It's going to take away a lot of administrative jobs. It will take away jobs that have to do with project management and keeping records of phone conversations and meetings. You can do that already. There's a certain AI, I forgot the name of it, but you
Whisper?
can go on and no, I don't think it was called Whisper. It was a software that has its sort of own site, and you can go to it and you can attach it to your computer and have a meeting and have the meeting completely recorded with schedules written, with a reading of the audience in terms of how they responded to what you were saying. I mean, it's really quite amazing. And that eliminates a score of jobs, which is sad because I think that human interaction is wonderful in a day. But I think that more designers are going to be able to operate it with a very low overhead, and that young designers who learn how to work with the technology are going to benefit the most because they'll not have been accustomed to using assistants and other people, and they'll be directing electronically to an electronic brain that will put out what they want or what they don't want. And I think it's going to be huge change. I don't necessarily think it's going to make design better or worse. I think in the end, I'm a believer that a machine is a tool, and that behind that tool is still a human being. When the people are tools and the machine is running things, then we really have to worry.
Okay.
I think we got a little bit of a time before that happens, but it will change the way people operate.
It's scary. So is it still worth, the youngsters coming into the industry now, is it still worth them pursuing a career in graphic design?
Absolutely. They're going to be way ahead of us.
Yeah. I
mean, because they're going to be able to adapt to the tools faster and theoretically be able to drive them and think about them as long as they are original thinkers. If you're not an original thinker, the tool will drive you or you'll be driven out.
Yeah, that's a very important wisdom. And so I suppose with this course that you're doing, you'll be sort of teaching people how to be great graphic designers and in a sense, have that value that you're alluding to, the value of what they do rather than, like just using tools for the sake of using tools.
Well, I think that's the goal. There's a limited amount that I can do as a teacher with these students in that because I'm not communicating with them directly and they're not in a class of mine, I can't look at their work and criticize it because that's actually the best way to learn and see. But what I think I've provided is sources for learning to see, which is really understanding how form changes through decades and how the things they are even operating with now are not really new, but they've evolved because there's always a human layer of imagination on top of them. And so when they begin to see, they'll know everything I know because they'll see everything I've seen, so they can add their own layer on top of it. And that's what the course will do.
That's great. So no matter what changes on the outside, the fundamentals of graphic design that you've known and worked with all these years, it has never changed. It's always stayed this solid companion.
Well, we always stand on other people's shoulders. And that's the way learning grows. And that's true of every profession where something is invented. And that the goal is to elevate the expectation of design so invention can happen.
Okay, so when you begin a project, what's the starting point when you sort of meet the client, and where do you go from? Because you mentioned that you often stick to the same kind of rules and elements. What's often the starting point?
Well, before I even meet with them, I find out what they're doing. If they're doing something, sometimes they're inventing in a business, and I can't research it. But if I can, I want to find out on my own what things look like and how they are probably operating. And then, of course, in the first meeting, those are the sorts of questions I'm asking. I want to know if they're making a change, why they want to make the change, and what their expectations of the business would be once they make the change. And maybe that sometimes they're not even making the right change. Sometimes they don't even need design. They actually need something else.
Yeah.
And that you want to really know them and figure out how you can help them. And you sometimes need to create teams of people to help, like they may need more in the way of telling their story than they actually need design, because maybe they have something that can just be tweaked and saved, and so they then don't go through the process of having to have people learn who they are. And sometimes they need a complete big redesign. I mean, all kinds of things are possible. It's always interesting.
Yeah.
And, I love when it works.
Yes.
Which is not always, but enough.
Yeah. And I suppose every project's different. So like you mentioned that sometimes there's nothing there as a starting point to research. Was that the case perhaps with the High Line? Because it was just a sort of idea, wasn't it? Yeah,
it didn't exist even as an idea yet. Nobody was even sure what that was. It was just they were saving an elevated rail track because a community board didn't want it to go away and thought, wouldn't it be cool if it was a park? Which seemed fundamentally like a stupid idea because it's really narrow and it's not very park-like. It's really a street.
Yes.
It's a rail street that you can walk along and see New York City really between the various intersections. So it's not even like you have the greatest view, but there was something, I hate to use this as a pun, but there was something elevating about it. It was like that you saw New York City actually from the second floor. And most people don't think about seeing it that way. You see it from the top of the building or from the street level. And all of a sudden you had this intimate connection with the city while being in greenery. And it's an urban park. It's amazing.
Did you come up with a name?
No, the High Line was actually the rail track. But the High Line was an elevated rail track that carried cattle down to the meat market, which is on 14th Street. And it had been abandoned for years. And 14th Street turned into all these shopping places, and there's no meat there. I mean, I think there may be one butcher. I have no idea. But it isn't what it was in the old days. And the notion of the design of it was I felt it had to be industrial, not park-like. So the kind of typography I used was from the industrial age of when railroads were being built all over the world. And I used something that was an Egyptian font because it came from building the canal at the Suez Canal, was where this kind of slab serif typography was invented. So I thought, okay, that'll be appropriate, and use sort of a modern version of that. And the logo was essentially a rail track. It's two lines that are vertical with two horizontal lines that make a track, and it's an H. It was the first thing I drew. There was nothing going to be better than that. And, it is 24 or 5 years later, and it's still there. Amazing.
And then sometimes I suppose when you go to a client, when a client comes to you, the solution might be right there in their face, but they just haven't seen it. Like, I suppose with your work for Microsoft Windows, they were sort of wanting to go down a different path. Is that right?
Well, they had an interesting sequence of changing their logo. Windows was always the major tool of Microsoft, and most organizations that I worked with used Microsoft for their software. And they had a point of view that was very different from Apple in terms of their software. That Apple is in many ways very controlling. Like, they have this very strong aesthetic, and they bring that aesthetic to all their product design and everything they make. And it's very spare, and it's very elegant, and it always looks contemporary. Microsoft was organized so differently. Apple was organized with Steve Jobs on the top, and everybody listened to him. Microsoft and Bill Gates did this deliberately, organized his sub-brands to make them all headed by engineers. And the engineers invented product. And then so they had their little fiefdoms within this array of products, but they didn't connect to each other. There was no system for the whole company. And it looked very messy. And in the Windows area, which was their most successful business area, they had initially their first logo was an eccentric window. It was flat and it had uneven panes. Then somebody must have said in a meeting, well, it doesn't look digital, right? So then they took a window and they bitmapped it. And they sort of made the bitmapping, making the window look like it was getting blurry, but it was actually just a bunch of little squares forming a window. And then somebody thought the window should have motion because computers have motion. So then they made a squiggly one. Then they decided to get rid of the bitmapping, and they made 4 squares with 4 colors. And they sort of made this waving flag out of it. And that's the point at which I got hired to sort of change it. And it was for Windows 8, which was a new piece of software. And the screen color graphics were flat, not gradated. Now, at that period of time, Apple, Google, and if you go and look at all the Windows, because this is 2012, they had these very gradated, what's the word for it? They were dimensionalized. The Google logo was dimensionalized, and it sort of was gradated. And the Apple logo was really not the logo itself, but all the background stuff on the iPhone had all this kind of stuff that I think they called it chrome in that day, which was taking colors and making them look like rainbows or making them not what they were. And the Microsoft software was actually unique in that it became flat, and they had flattened it out. They'd gotten rid of that stuff, and that was one of the lead designers there who was quite terrific in the digital design. And I saw it and I said, well, why are we doing this with the logo? The logo looks like it's waving like a flag. It's got 4 colors. The Windows logo was initially blue. Why don't we just pick a blue logo and put a logo in perspective? Because that's what I thought they were trying to draw. And that became Windows 8. And when I sold it to the organization, I demonstrated the logo on a perspective chart. And in the center of the perspective chart, I made the original 4 colors that they were using as a square, as the basis of the chart, because they at that point in time had a store, a Microsoft store, and I thought, well, the Microsoft store could be the logo flat with the original colors that they used from the Windows logo. Yeah. So I turned in the Windows logo, gave them the system, it was executed, and the next thing I know, there's the Microsoft logo with the 4 colors in it that I specified, and they got rid of the typography, and I wasn't even there. They just used it right off the chart.
That's incredible. That must have been a proud moment.
I really enjoy being able to understand logics of organizations and how they make decisions and when they make decisions and when they're really ready to change. And what I think the contribution of the Windows logo was, and they got rid of it then, and then they came back to it with some kind of like crazy lighting. But people need to understand that an identity is not something you really should change very much. That the point of it is to be identified. And if you change it very much, you're not going to be recognized at a certain point. And also, it sort of makes you look a little unstable. And I fear, this is one of the things that I fear most about our contemporary age, is that the expectation that Instagram changes every day makes one think the logo should change every day. And no, really, it shouldn't.
Yeah. So no matter how...
You don't get a nose job every day.
Yeah. Well, you might get your nose pierced, but, the foundation stays the same. Yeah, exactly.
The foundation stays the same, exactly.
Well, this is proving our point then, isn't it, about technology and AI? The value is there. And graphic design isn't just about making pretty pictures. It's about going in and solving problems and getting in at board level. Have you had to sort of fight your way into those discussions? Because I can imagine that's when the best work happens.
I don't know that I fight my way into it. Mostly, I don't like to work at a level where I can't affect change. So the first things I ask when I'm interviewed is who are the final decision makers?
Yeah.
And what is the structure and hierarchy of your company and how do you operate? And I have presidents of organizations who like to be very involved and presidents of organizations who have groups of people who they like to see it first before they look at it.
Right.
And both are good. What you don't want to do is be hired purely at middle management and stay there. You won't get anything done.
No, you certainly won't. And obviously it's the structure of the company internally that can sometimes make a kind of branding project not work as well. So it might not be just that. It might be that they need to sort themselves out internally before they can solve their branding, for example.
That's absolutely true, and it happens very often.
Yeah.
You know, they think they'll, and what they discover is they have to sort of change this decision-making process, and they have to be able to get groups of people on the same page in terms of understanding, which requires a lot of education.
Have you had to say that sometimes? You're not ready for this yet? You're not ready to work with me yet? You need to go away and do this first?
Yeah, I've done that.
Yeah. Great. That's nice to know. Having worked in this industry as well, it's you think it, you know, you don't expect when you start out that you'll end up being involved in those conversations at that level, but we can't do our jobs very well unless we are at that table.
No, I know it's going to be futile in certain instances, and it's going to frustrate the hell out of me, and they're not going to get anything good anyway. So it's easy to give up the job because it's never going to be worth the money.
I was going to ask, that was going to be my next question, actually. You know, how do you handle difficult clients?
I used to try to stay the course and just beat my brains in, but it isn't worth it. In the end, you lose more money than you make.
Better to just walk away.
Or refer them to somebody else and maybe they come back when they're ready. That happens sometimes.
Yeah, that's a good way to handle it. So I think people starting out in this industry, you know, they might be surprised to learn that, as I've said, but figuring out the inner workings of the business. What else have you found in your career that has surprised you as you've learned and grown?
I think I'm sort of excited and surprised at my ability to learn new areas of design. I would never thought I would have been an environmental graphic designer. I never would have thought I would have worked on buildings or worked on cities. I was on the design commission in New York City. I walk around the city and I see things that I've actually designed and built and drawn from a little sketch to being out on the street forever. And, you know, I never thought I would be doing anything like that. I didn't have that vision of myself. I didn't think I could grow to that capacity. And I find that at the heart of everything are really a couple of things. They're understanding what the situation is. If it's a theater or if it's an art museum or if it's a corporation, what are the codes that people need to understand in either seeing an identity or understanding a place that they work in. And then on top of it, how do you best achieve it? And how do you persuade other people and excite and make them enthusiastic enough to build it and do it? And you could be designing a small book jacket, or you could be designing a block of a city, but you use a lot of the same principles to get the thing done.
It's the vehicles might change, but the way the message is put together, it's the same overall. Have you had a recent project where you've had to roll something out across, widest range of different things as possible and really enjoyed that?
Well, I'm working on one right now, but I can't tell you what it is.
Oh, come on, Paula.
So no, I can't. I can't do that. But,
okay.
But I think that they're all very similar, and that you find yourself continually surprised at how much you know, and continuously surprised at what you don't know. And that's the exciting part, because then you have to learn it. And that's really great.
Is that...
And right now, I'm very interested in what AI can do and can't do. And figuring that out to understand how it's going to be a successful tool. On the other hand, what is going to be the drawback of it to the profession, or how other people who really don't know how to work with the tool try to work with it.
This is great.
And that will happen.
Do you think this is how you've stayed motivated and excited about your work, just being passionate about adapting to the change? Because change is inevitable.
Well, I really haven't changed. I mean, I don't know how to operate anything. I only hire people who can operate it. But I know what it can do. And pretty soon it'll operate itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
You'll tell it what to do and it'll do it.
I mean, we can do that now, and we're probably not far off the AI being able to prompt itself. I mean, did I read somewhere there are jobs in San Francisco at the moment paying, hundreds of thousands of dollars to people who are prompt engineers, but I expect they'll be the shortest lived professions in history, because they'll be
Probably.
sort of redundant in a couple of years' time. It's a fascinating time to be alive.
A little bit scary.
It's terrifying. Yes. Yeah. I mean, we've all watched Terminator 2.
Yep.
Is part of the fun then when the client doesn't really know what they want, or is that to you a complete nightmare?
The client not knowing what they want is dangerous. Because then you're sort of continually playing 20 questions. However, a client often doesn't think they know what they want, but they do know it when they see it. So that you can find out in what capacity and within what territory to begin to talk to them and show them things, and that you can show them things that educate them, or show them at competing brands in their own area, or brands that have nothing to do with them and how people do things. And very often you'll find the client knows more about what they want than they even think. So that's what you have to do. It takes a bit of work, and it's really part of the first phase to get them ready to look at design.
Yeah, that's great. And I suppose the best work comes from the best partnerships. It has to be a collaborative effort, right?
Almost inevitably.
Yeah. You've worked with the Public Theatre for a long time. Are you still helping them?
30 years this January.
My goodness. Congratulations. Is that one of your favourite projects? I mean, you've got to say that, right?
Well, why would I stay with it? As a matter of fact, at one point in time, they hit a real financial crisis with the first director, where they had two giant plays that had both gone to Broadway and bombed. And they lost some of the endowment of the theater, which is privately financed. So they had me working, and I agreed to work without pay for a period of, I don't know, about a half a year or so. Mm-hmm. Then they put me on the board of directors, and I went to the board of directors meetings, and I really didn't want to be there. I found half of them boring. So, but what motivated me to get off the board was that at that point in time, they'd gotten some money from the city to renovate the building, and they told me I couldn't work on the signage for the building because it would be a conflict of interest because I was on the board.
Right.
And so I said, you mean I don't get to sign the building that I've been working in for, 15 years because I'm on the board that I don't even enjoy? So I just resigned the board and did the signage. And then I realized that if they paid me, then I would have to include people in the process of making the season graphics. And it would make it painful and depressing for me because they were never going to be able to pay me enough money because they're not for profit and they didn't have the money. So I would have the same nonsense I have with so many other clients. And then I said, well, I'm going to work for free, but you have to do what I'm recommending. And that's
Brilliant.
been my relationship with the public theater. But I have used it for actually, it's my lab. It's really where I can experiment what works and what doesn't. And I set up an in-house art department. And what we do, which is quite unusual, is the public theater season starts with Shakespeare in the Park, which I begin designing in January and February, and the plays open in the spring. And what I do in that capacity is I create the look of the season for the year. I don't change the logo. I don't even change the typography at all. It's really color system, use of the typography. Sometimes we use a thin version of the font or a fat version of font, or cut it up or stencil it or do all kinds of stuff with it. And then all the materials for all the programs of the public are designed with that for a course of a year. And then at the end of the year, we change the whole thing and do it for the next year. And it's been incredibly successful, because what ended up happening was people were buying tickets for individual plays, which the theaters and the public are very small, and you can't really make any sustainable money on that. But when we created seasons, people started buying memberships.
Amazing.
So it changed the whole aspect. Now, people are going back to buying individual tickets because COVID changed the behavior. So we have to rethink it again. But what I do is I use the public theater sort of as my lab, where I'm kind of figuring out how does the public respond to things, what do they see, and how can I make that continue and apply what I'm doing there for other people. And that's why it's my lab.
What was the last interesting insight you got from it?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it's really that people need first to recognize something. If you move it too far afield and they don't recognize it, they're going to be afraid of it. And that the second learning is that there are periods of time, and COVID is one, where behaviors of people change radically. And you can't say, oh, it's going to go away. It's factored into the behavior and it'll go forward. And COVID was one of those experiences.
That's fascinating. So it's a question you probably get asked a lot. How do you ensure these brands stand the test of time?
That's a really good question. I don't actually know the answer to it, but I have Citibank is, I think it's 26 or 7 years old now.
Yep.
The Citi, essentially they tweaked the C on it, but they didn't really change the identity. The High Line is exactly as I designed it. Shake Shack is global, exactly as I designed it. These things are all 20 years old. And I think that there's something where you cross a point. If a brand has progressed and become successful, you trust your logo even more because your consumer recognizes it, and you'd be crazy to change it. You know, you can tweak it. You don't want something to look dated or fusty, but there's no reason to change something that's actually working for you. And they're designed to be long-term. And they have an advantage over newer things that are designed that have to develop their own recognizability, particularly if it's a startup and you don't even know what it is.
Yeah, it's true. And that's a part of successful branding, is the recognition and the loyalty and the credibility that comes with it. What about designers themselves? How do they stand the test of time?
I think if you love designing and you find out how you can have the things that you want to make get made, you'll stay with it. If you become very, very frustrated by it because you've never been in a situation where you either had the power or the understanding of how to get other people to see, then you're going to be frustrated with it and want to leave.
Yeah.
I mean, as a designer, you do need to teach people how to see.
Yeah, it's true. You do. It's the massive part of the job. You know, I was going to ask you a question. It's just completely left me. It was a good question. It's my Apple Watch telling me to stand up. It's so annoying. All these distractions we have these days. Do you have an Apple Watch? Or are you loyal to Microsoft?
I don't like Apple Watches.
No, it's very invasive. I don't know. I've become addicted to it, Paula. Have you got any advice? Shall I just throw it in the bin?
Throw it in the bin. You can get along without it.
Yeah, so if that's great advice for designers standing the test of time, and you say that, you know, to keep enjoying it, and if you're frustrated, I guess in that respect, a lot of people I know are very frightened of AI and what's coming. How do they kind of pivot and stay relevant, I suppose, as these tools change and evolve?
The machine is a machine. You're a person. You're the boss. The machine's the machine.
Exactly. We can switch them off.
Absolutely. You're the boss. You have the idea. The machine, you're feeding the idea to the machine. The machine is going to combine it with other stuff that's already in the machine, but it's still a machine.
So is there anything else that surprises you when working in this field, or is it a case of, you know, been there, done that? You know, do clients ever sort of come out with something that really kind of, but, you know, puts you, oh, I've never heard that before? Or do you think you've kind of pretty much covered it all?
What amazes me now is how visually sophisticated clients have become. And that's a product of 30 years of people beginning really to understand not just what branding is, but how to recognize something that's designed versus something that is poorly executed. Everything is designed. Some things are good and some things are bad. But I find that there are very few of my clients who truly have bad taste, where there was a lot more of that back in the day, where people just came in and asked for just things that would humiliate a designer to have to do. Or changes that were made to something that made something extraordinarily bad. I don't have that happen that much anymore.
You don't have anybody say, make it pop?
Make it bigger? Make it bigger, make it pop, No. I used to. I don't now. They just don't. They don't because they know it's sort of icky. It exhibits sort of bad taste.
Yeah. Well, it's good to know. It's good to know the world's getting better.
If you look back at the wealth of work unedited, not for a design book, you see how terrible things were.
Love it. It's nice to look back though, because then you see how much you've progressed and how much things have improved.
True.
Looking at designers again and how they might stand the test of time, is it important for designers to promote themselves? I mean, you've done a lot of that yourself.
Actually, it depends upon. I've taken opportunities, but I can't say that I actively promote myself. I don't have a website. I don't use Instagram. I don't use Twitter. Pentagram posts my work, and that's how it gets around. What happened to me was that in the 70s, late 70s especially, and 80s, everybody was aware of the fact that women designers were not put forward for any position of power or anything. And I was one of the few women who people knew because I made all these record covers, and the record covers won awards, and they got in shows. Then I would get asked to judge competitions, and then I was asked to be on panels. And for about 10 years, I was the only woman on every panel. And I would get the phone call, "Can you be on our panel? It's really hard to find women panelists," and stuff like that. It was really insulting and kind of terrible, but I went. So I would be exposed, and people began to know who I was. Then when I left CBS Records, I started my own business with a male partner, and I was the famous one. And that has continued because people vote for the name they know.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
So it does help.
But it isn't like I went around and said, "Get me." I just sort of sat there and they called because they were lazy. Essentially, people are lazy. They don't look for somebody else.
It's so true, and that's still the case today, Paula.
I'm sure. I'm sure. I've just sort of like rode this thing with it that I kind of never understood. But the other thing is you actually have to have something to say.
Oh God, yeah. You know, what's the point otherwise?
There is a little work involved, you know.
Of course, and talent. You're not just a ticked box, Paula.
No, but I was a beneficiary of that. I know that.
Yeah, yeah. So what stopped you from going on social media? Have you ever had an Instagram or a Facebook, or did you just avoid it completely?
I think it's stupid. I'm sorry. I just think it's dumb. I mean,
I love it.
Well, this is part of, I empathize with the users, you know, like I, particularly in self-promotion, but, you know, what is it called? The humble brag, you know, that there are people who go on Instagram and they say, "I'm so proud and honored to talk about this project I did for yada yada." Why don't you just put it up there and say "here"? You know, I mean, it is.
It's why I've got.
It kind of makes my skin crawl a little.
Yes.
And that's because I grew up in the day that isn't how you got known. The way you got known is you entered design competitions and had your work selected, and people could see the work in an annual. And there was no digital media, and you could have 5-6 pieces, and then all of a sudden the whole world of design knew who you were. Now you have the sea of, there's Behance, and then there's everybody's Instagram post, and then people tweet things around, and I don't know where that gets you. I don't do anything. I don't maintain any of that stuff.
You should go on there, Paula, and start Twitter storms and get in there.
I don't want to do any of that. No, I don't. It's like that. It's not. I look at it sometimes. I remember I was working for on America the Book with Jon Stewart, and at that point in time, that was really where people were. It was just the beginning of it, where people were beginning to say really nasty things about each other online, and it got very snarky. And Jon Stewart told me, because he'd already been victimized, he says, "Don't go anywhere near that."
Yeah.
It's
good advice.
I took his advice. It was because he had actually been hurt by it. You know, you sort of read these terrible things about yourself. And that happened. That happened in the blogosphere when they were at the beginning of people writing treatises. You know, what became brand new. It started to become very snarky and nasty and
human behavior, I guess,
so anyway.
At its worst. So you've avoided that. Social media. Do you think it's changed culture? Do you think it's changed people? I mean, it's certainly made politics very kind of divisive.
It certainly has. I think the news media has as much to do with that as social media.
Well, yeah.
I mean,
it gets clicks, doesn't it? And likes. Didn't they do a kind of test? If it was more negative, they got more kind of traffic.
That's right.
Oh, horrible.
Well, it's terrible. Yeah. It's terrible for the country, and it's terrible for individuals, and it's especially terrible for adolescents who are dealing with, their social existence now and what their expectations are and what they have to do. I mean, I would not want to be a teenager now.
No, I agree. I'm so glad Facebook wasn't around when I was a kid and growing up, and even mobile phones. We used to run up the street to the phone box if we wanted to ring our friends in private so my mum couldn't listen.
Right.
Go
exactly.
And knock on people's doors and say, "Are you free? Are you playing? Are you coming out?" The good old days.
Yeah, that was a bit of an easier life.
Yeah.
I think they have to mature so fast.
It's so true. I wish I could go back, but anyway. So, you've launched this course, you're taking people through these steps. Is this what we've talked about today? Does this hint at some of the things you go over, or do you sort of very methodically go through your process? Will people, if they take the course?
The course has all of that. There's a section where I'm showing start to finish work. I can't show the client meeting, but I can talk about what the problems were that the individual clients had and what I had to correct. So there's and it shows the phases of how I accomplished it, that's. I think it's one lesson that's broken up into 3 sections, but then there is just the history of graphic design, like where it came from and how universal it is as a language, and the birth of typography and the explosion of typography now. And it shows how some things that were done over 100 years ago are totally contemporary now.
Wow.
And you can see, actually, in Europe, particularly in Germany, graphic design was very, very advanced. And when you look at the work, if you didn't know and didn't see the date, you would have thought it was done yesterday.
Incredible.
And of course, it's done without computers, it's drawn by hand, etc. But it's very, very modern. I mean, you come across things like the Bass logo, the triangle with a script. I think it was designed in like 1842 or something like that. Or you take the, maybe later 1800s, or you take the Audi logo, was 1901. I mean, there are many, many identities that have just hung in there. Maybe they were tweaked, but you realize that nothing is actually new as we understand new. There's only things that have evolved.
So in that case, did you find pulling together this course quite therapeutic?
Well, I found that I knew more than I thought I knew because I'd already been through this. And so pulling it together to see it became very exciting. Because you realize that there's a connection between everything that's made that's really of quality, and that it can be very, very inspiring. After I had completed putting together these logos, I worked on a logo project that was a relatively pure project like that, and I pushed it much farther than I would have pushed if I hadn't been doing that at that point in time. I mean, you have to go back and look. You have to look behind and you have to look ahead. And you should be looking what's going on, but you have to be looking where it came from. Most students don't know that they're doing things that have been done before. And they have to know where it came from and how to work with it and how to evolve it.
Wonderful. So one final question, Paula. And I don't know if you can answer this, but what one piece of advice would you give to other designers looking to get ahead, to boost their skills, to be better at their profession?
You have to love it. If you love it, you'll work hard at it. You'll make discoveries. You'll find it's not a profession. It's more of a calling in a way. I hate to use the word because it sounds like I'm being religious about it, which I'm not, but it's something you are driven to make things, and you want to see those things made, and that you want to make the things for the singular reason of elevating the expectation of what those things can be, so we move forward. And that you do it for businesses, you do it for private small companies and large, you do it for social purposes, you do it for government, you do it as a donation, you do it in all respects. And that they're all about elevating, about moving things forward.
Moving things forward. That's a great way to end things. Well, thank you so much, Paula, for your time. And I hope you'll be able to share what you're working on with us soon. Thanks to Paula Scher for joining us this week. If you want to find out more about anything we've covered, go to our show notes at creativeboom.com/podcast. Next week, we'll be chatting with Stefan Sagmeister to hear more about his new book and why now is better. We promise it'll be an interview full of optimism and hope, the perfect antidote to today's fast-moving and uncertain world. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe via any of the major channels, and every Monday you'll get conversations with creatives to uncover the secrets to success and all the practical advice, funny stories and honest wisdom that will help you build a booming creative career. Until next time.